Elias Rowan was a man who built everything from nothing. By the age of 36, he owned one of the most powerful digital security companies in the region. Banks trusted his systems. Corporations relied on his code. His name carried weight. He lived in a quiet, modern mansion on the edge of the city, surrounded by glass walls and silence. Elias liked silence. It gave him control. By his side was his wife, Celine Rowan. Celine was beautiful, elegant, and admired wherever she went. People envied her life and admired her marriage. Online, she looked like the perfect wife to a powerful man. But behind closed doors, the marriage was already fading. Celine loved status. She loved attention. She loved being married to a strong, successful man. What she did not love was patience, sacrifice, or weakness. Elias noticed the distance between them, but he ignored it. He believed love didn't need constant reassurance. He believed loyalty was enough. The night everything changed, Elias left home late for a business meeting. Celine barely looked up from her phone as he grabbed his keys. "Another meeting?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I'll be back soon." That was the last normal conversation of his life. Rain poured heavily as Elias drove through the dark road. His mind was focused on work, on plans for the future. Then suddenly, the car skidded. Tires lost control. Headlights flashed. The crash was violent. When Elias opened his eyes, the smell of disinfectant filled the air. Machines beeped steadily around him. He tried to move his legs. Nothing happened. A doctor stood nearby, his voice careful and calm. "The impact damaged your spinal cord," he said. "You are paralyzed from the waist down." The words didn't echo. They settled. Celine stood beside him, crying loudly, holding his hand. She promised she would never leave him. She said they would face everything together. Elias believed her. At first, Celine visited often. She posted inspirational messages online, telling the world how strong her husband was. People praised her devotion. But slowly, her visits became shorter. Then less frequent. Sometimes she didn't come at all. When Elias finally returned home in a wheelchair, the mansion felt colder. Familiar, but empty. Celine avoided sitting with him. Avoided long conversations. Avoided looking at him for too long. One evening, Elias asked quietly why she didn't spend time with him anymore. She sighed, annoyed. "My life didn't stop because yours changed." From that moment, everything shifted. Celine started staying out late. She dressed up more. Smiled more, just not at home. Phone calls were taken in private rooms. Laughter filled the house, but it was never meant for Elias. To her, the wheelchair was no longer a chair. It was a reminder of the man she believed she lost. The doctors recommended full-time assistance. Celine agreed immediately. She didn't want the responsibility. That was when Nira arrived. Nira was quiet, modest, and nervous as she stepped into the mansion. She carried only a small bag and wore worn shoes. Life had not been kind to her. When she met Elias, she didn't stare at the wheelchair. She didn't lower her voice in pity. She looked him in the eyes. "Good afternoon, sir," she said gently. Elias studied her for a moment. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. She shook her head. "I've known fear before. This isn't it." For the first time since the accident, Elias felt something unfamiliar. Respect. Nira helped him patiently. She listened when he spoke. She treated him like a man, not a burden. Celine noticed it. And something dark began to grow inside her. She had stopped seeing Elias as a husband. Now she began seeing him as an obstacle. And she believed she had finally found someone she could trust to remove him. She was wrong. Celine's behavior changed quickly. She became colder, sharper, more impatient. She spoke to Elias only when necessary, and when she did, her words were clipped and careless. She no longer hid her frustration. Every sound the wheelchair made annoyed her. Every request felt like a burden. At night, she slept facing away from him. Sometimes, she didn't come home at all. Elias noticed everything. He said nothing. Years in business had taught him one rule: people reveal who they truly are when they think you are powerless. And Celine believed he was powerless. One afternoon, Elias overheard her speaking on the phone in the garden. Her voice was light, playful, unfamiliar. "I told you already," she laughed. "He can't even stand on his own. This won't last much longer." Elias closed his eyes. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt more was how easily she erased him. That evening, Celine called Nira into her room. She closed the door behind them. "You're doing well," Celine said, sitting at her vanity. "Elias seems comfortable with you." Nira nodded politely. "Thank you, ma'am." Celine studied her reflection, then spoke casually. "He trusts you, doesn't he?" Nira hesitated. "I'm just doing my job." Celine smiled. "Good. Because I need someone I can rely on." She reached into her drawer and pulled out a small bottle. Clear. Unlabeled. "This is medicine," Celine said calmly. "The doctor prescribed it for his pain. I need you to add it to his drinks at night." Nira stared at the bottle. She knew immediately it wasn't medicine. "I don't understand," Nira said quietly. Celine's smile vanished. "Listen carefully," she said. "Elias is suffering. His life is over. This will help him rest. And it will help you too." She slid an envelope across the table. Money. Enough to change Nira's life. No more struggling. No more hunger. No more fear. Just do as I say. Nira's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope. That night, Nira stood in the kitchen holding a glass of water. The bottle sat beside it. Elias watched her from the doorway. "You seem troubled," he said gently. Nira froze. She looked at him, really looked at him. Not broken. Not defeated. Just quiet, and observant. "I'm fine, sir," she replied. But she didn't pour anything into the glass. Instead, she emptied the bottle down the sink. From that moment on, everything changed. Nira began paying attention. She noticed Celine's schedules. Her phone calls. Her late nights. Her secret meetings. And Elias was watching too. Celine believed she was in control. She didn't realize she was being studied. By the man she underestimated. And the maid she tried to use. "When you're ready, say." From that night on, the house felt different. Not quieter. Not louder. Heavier. Celine continued living as if Elias were already gone. She moved through the mansion with impatience, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. She complained openly now, about the wheelchair-blocking hallways, about the silence in the evenings, about how her life had become smaller. Elias listened to everything. He learned her moods. Her habits. The way she spoke differently when she thought no one could hear her. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand on the balcony speaking softly into her phone. "I can't do this much longer," she whispered once. "I deserve more than this." Elias heard every word. He never confronted her. A man who panics reveals himself too soon. Instead, he waited. Nira became his constant presence. She woke him each morning with care, helped him dress, helped him move through the day with quiet dignity. She spoke respectfully but never with pity. She treated him like a man who still mattered. That alone changed everything. One afternoon, while helping Elias into the garden, Neera finally spoke. "Ma'am asked me to give you something in your drinks at night," she said softly. Elias didn't react. He didn't blink. He only nodded once. "Thank you for telling me," he replied calmly. Neera's voice shook. "I didn't do it. I couldn't." "I know," Elias said. He had known from the moment she hesitated that night. From that day forward, Elias began to move, not physically, but strategically. He made quiet phone calls. Short ones. Careful ones. Old business partners. Lawyers. A private investigator who owed him a favor. Nothing obvious. Nothing traceable. Celine noticed a change. Not in Elias' body, but in his eyes. They were sharper. More focused. Unbothered. It unsettled her. "Why are you always watching me?" she snapped one evening. Elias smiled faintly. "Old habit." She scoffed and walked away. Meanwhile, Neera documented everything. Dates. Times. Conversations. She recorded Celine's calls when they were loud enough to hear. She noted when Celine came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. She saw the men who waited in expensive cars at the end of the street. Celine believed Neera was loyal. After all, she had offered her money. What she didn't realize was that Neera had already chosen her side. One night, Celine returned home drunk and angry. She stormed into Elias' room. "You think you're still the man I married?" she shouted. "Sitting there, pretending you're in control?" Elias looked at her calmly. "You married me for what I was," he said. "Not for who I am." Celine laughed bitterly. "You're nothing now." She turned and left the room. Elias exhaled slowly. That was the moment he knew. He didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. And he wanted her to destroy herself. Celine grew careless. People who believe they are untouchable always do. Her late nights became routine. Sometimes she wouldn't return until dawn, stepping into the house with the confidence of someone who believed no one was paying attention. She stopped hiding her phone. She stopped lowering her voice. She wanted Elias to feel small. One afternoon, she stood in the living room, scrolling through messages, smiling to herself. "He's convenient," she said aloud without looking up. "But he's finished." Elias sat quietly across from her. "Convenient for what?" he asked. She froze for a brief moment, then laughed. "You wouldn't understand." She walked away. That same week, the private investigator sent Elias his first report. Names. Locations. Photographs. Celine meeting a man in a luxury hotel. Another man at a private lounge. Text messages confirming affairs that had been going on long before the accident. Elias closed the file calmly. He felt no anger. Only clarity. Neera watched him carefully. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I just see things clearly now." The doctor visits continued. Celine attended only when necessary, always distracted, always impatient. During one appointment, she leaned toward the doctor and whispered loudly enough for Elias to hear. "Isn't there another option?" The doctor stiffened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then smiled awkwardly. "I just mean, something to make things easier." Elias saw it then. She wasn't just tired of him. She was trying to erase him. That night, Elias made another call. "I'm ready," he said simply. Celine's behavior worsened. She criticized Nira constantly, watching her closely now, suspicious. "You're getting too close to him," Celine snapped one morning. "I'm just doing my job," Nira replied calmly. "Remember who pays you," Celine warned. Nira lowered her eyes. But her loyalty no longer belonged to Celine. Elias began appearing in meetings again, virtually. His voice carried authority. His presence commanded respect. Business partners listened. Celine noticed. "I thought you retired," she said sarcastically. Elias met her gaze. "I never stopped thinking." That answer unsettled her. The power she believed she had taken from him was returning. And she didn't like it. One evening, Celine invited guests over without informing Elias. Loud laughter filled the house. Music played. Strangers walked through rooms Elias once controlled. Nira watched silently. Elias watched closely. As Celine laughed among her guests, one truth became clear. She was no longer hiding. And when people stop hiding, they expose themselves. Celine's confidence grew with each passing day. She began treating the mansion as if it already belonged to her alone. Elias was no longer a husband in her eyes, but a problem she needed to outlive. She spoke over him during conversations, dismissed his opinions, and made decisions without consulting him. And yet, she never noticed how carefully Elias was watching. One afternoon, Celine entered his room without knocking. She stood near the window, arms crossed, her expression cold. "I've been thinking," she said. "This house is too big for the way things are now." Elias looked at her calmly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued, "I deserve freedom. Space. A life that doesn't revolve around this." She gestured toward the wheelchair. "So what are you saying?" Elias asked. She hesitated, then spoke slowly. "Maybe it would be better if you moved into a care facility. Somewhere professional. Somewhere appropriate." The word hung in the air. Elias nodded once. "If that's what you want," he replied. Celine wasn't expecting that. She narrowed her eyes. "You're not even going to fight?" Elias smiled faintly. "Why would I fight someone who already left?" Her jaw tightened. That night, Celine made a call from the balcony. He agreed, she whispered excitedly. "Soon, everything will be settled." Nira recorded the time. The date. The words. The following days were filled with planning, by Celine. She contacted lawyers, not realizing Elias already had one working quietly behind the scenes. She spoke of selling assets, not knowing Elias had already transferred control of the company months earlier. She thought she was ahead. She was walking straight into the trap. Nira continued her role flawlessly. Quiet. Obedient. Invisible. But every night, she reported everything to Elias. "She's planning something bigger," Nira said one evening. "I know," Elias replied calmly. "Let her." Celine invited one of her lovers to the house when Elias was supposedly asleep. They laughed in the living room. Drank wine. Mocked him openly. "He can't even hear us," Celine laughed. "And even if he could, what would he do?" Elias listened from the hallway. And he remembered every word. The final piece fell into place when Celine attempted something reckless. She approached Nira again. "I need you to help me tonight," Celine said quietly. Nira's heart raced. This time, Celine wasn't offering money. She was offering instructions. Celine's voice was calm when she spoke, but there was something sharp beneath it. "Tonight," she said, "I don't want mistakes." Nira stood still, her face unreadable. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. Celine stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You'll prepare his evening drink. Just like before. Only this time, you won't hesitate. She placed another small bottle into Neera's hand. Different from the first. Darker. This one works faster, Celine added. He won't feel anything. By morning, everything will be over. Neera felt her chest tighten. And then? Neera asked carefully. Celine smiled, slow and confident. Then we move on. Celine turned and walked away, already convinced it was done. But Neera never went to the kitchen. Instead, she went straight to Elias' room. She placed the bottle on the table in front of him. She's trying again, Neera said quietly. Stronger this time. Elias looked at the bottle for a long moment. Thank you, he said. That night, Elias made his final call. Tomorrow morning, he said calmly, I want everyone here. The lawyer. The investigator. The doctor. The witnesses. Make sure she doesn't suspect anything. Morning came slowly. Celine woke up confident, already dressed in black, not out of mourning, but preparation. She applied makeup carefully, rehearsing her expression in the mirror. When she entered Elias' room, she froze. The room wasn't quiet. People stood inside. A lawyer. A doctor. A man holding a folder thick with documents. And Neera, standing beside Elias. What is this? Celine demanded. Elias spoke evenly. A conversation you've been avoiding. The lawyer stepped forward. Mrs. Rowan, we have evidence of attempted harm, financial manipulation, and marital misconduct. Celine laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. The investigator placed photographs on the table. Hotel rooms. Text messages. Audio recordings. The doctor spoke next. The substance found in the bottle is not medication. It is toxic. Celine's face drained of color. She turned to Neera. You lied to me. Neera met her gaze. I chose what was right. Celine backed away slowly. Elias looked at her, calm and steady. You underestimated two things, he said. My patience. And her integrity. For the first time, Celine felt fear. Real fear. And she finally understood. The man in the wheelchair was never weak. He was waiting. Silence filled the room after Elias finished speaking. Celine's mind raced as she looked from one face to another, searching for an escape. Her confidence, once so effortless, cracked under the weight of the evidence laid before her. This is a setup, she said quickly. You planned this. You turned everyone against me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Rowan, the recordings were obtained legally. The financial transfers were authorized by Mr. Rowan months ago. And the substances found in the bottle matched the same compound purchased using your personal account. Celine's breath grew shallow. She turned to Elias. You wouldn't do this to me, she said, her voice softer now. After everything we've been through. Elias didn't raise his voice. Everything we've been through is exactly why I did. The investigator stepped forward again. We also have witnesses, he said, including staff who heard your conversations and observed your meetings. Celine's legs weakened. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Neera stood quietly nearby, her hands clasped together. Her heart pounded, but she didn't look away. The doctor spoke once more. If the substance had been consumed, the outcome could have been fatal. That word echoed in Celine's mind. Fatal. She laughed suddenly, high and strained. You think anyone will believe a maid over me? She snapped. Elias turned slightly toward Neera. She doesn't need belief, he said. She has truth. Celine lunged forward. You ungrateful girl. She shouted. I saved you from nothing. Nira flinched, but she held her ground. "You tried to make me destroy a man who trusted me," Nira said quietly. "I won't carry that guilt." Security entered the room. Celine's voice dropped to a whisper. "Elias, please." He looked at her one last time. "I lost my legs," he said calmly. "Not my mind." Celine was escorted out of the room, her protests fading down the hallway. The mansion felt lighter once she was gone. Elias exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. "Thank you," he said to Nira. She nodded, tears threatening to fall. "I just did what was right." The lawyer approached Elias. "Proceeding with legal action?" "Yes," Elias replied without hesitation. Outside, Celine's world was collapsing. And she had no one to blame but herself. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. News traveled fast. Celine's name, once associated with luxury and admiration, began appearing in places she never imagined: legal reports, whispered conversations, quiet warnings among social circles. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. Elias watched it all from a distance. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. Justice was not something to enjoy. It was something to accept. Court proceedings began quietly at first. Elias chose discretion over spectacle. He allowed the evidence to speak for itself: the recordings, the financial trails, the medical reports. Celine arrived at court wearing dark glasses and a stiff expression. She avoided eye contact with everyone except Elias. When their eyes met, she looked away. Nira testified calmly. Her voice shook only once, and even then, she continued. She spoke of the bottle. The instructions. The fear she felt, and the choice she made. The courtroom listened. For the first time in her life, Celine wasn't admired. She was questioned. Every lie she tried to tell collapsed under evidence. Every excuse sounded hollow. The verdict didn't come with drama. It came with finality. Celine lost everything. The marriage was dissolved. Her access to assets was revoked. Legal consequences followed swiftly, leaving no room for denial. When it was over, Elias sat alone in the quiet courtroom. Nira approached slowly. "It's finished," she said. Elias nodded. "No," he replied. "It's begun." Life in the mansion changed. The air felt cleaner. The silence no longer pressed down, it breathed. Elias resumed leadership of his company fully. Meetings filled his days again. His voice carried authority, not pity. And Nira remained. Not as a maid. As someone he trusted. One evening, they sat in the garden as the sun dipped below the horizon. "You didn't have to stay," Elias said. Nira smiled softly. "I wanted to." For the first time since the accident, Elias felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not power. Not control. Peace. Time passed, slowly but steadily. Elias focused on rebuilding what had been damaged, not just his company, but himself. Physical therapy became part of his routine. Progress was slow, sometimes frustrating, but he never stopped trying. Each day reminded him that strength was not only measured by movement, but by resilience. Nira supported him quietly. She never pushed. Never pitted. She celebrated small victories without making them feel small. When Elias returned fully to public life, people noticed the change. He was calmer. More grounded. Less concerned with appearances. He no longer tried to prove anything. One afternoon, Elias addressed his staff for the first time since everything had happened. "I lost more than my mobility," he said honestly. "I lost trust. And I learned how valuable integrity truly is." His eyes moved briefly to Nira. Some people don't wear power, he continued. They carry it quietly. The room understood. Celine faded from memory. Her name became a caution, not a headline. The life she once chased moved on without her. And for the first time, she was truly invisible. Back at the mansion, life found a new rhythm. Laughter returned, not loud, not forced, but real. Conversations lasted longer. Silence felt comfortable again. One evening, Elias and Nira sat together in the living room, the windows open, warm air drifting inside. "You saved my life," Elias said quietly. Nira shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just refuse to let you be destroyed." Elias smiled. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't looking backward. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking forward. The accident took his legs. Betrayal took his illusion. But loyalty, unexpected and quiet, gave him something far greater. A future built not on strength alone, but on truth. The strongest people are often the ones who endure in silence. If this story meant something to you, take a moment to like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. And let us know in the comments, what would you have done?